This is your before and after story, where your first steps towards a new life-changing career begin. Southeastern College can take you there. We offer in-demand hybrid and online programs with hands-on training, led by in-field career professionals, and career services to put you on the path to a rewarding and fulfilling future. This is where your transformation begins. Southeastern College, your future is bright. Visit sec.edu to get started.
First and goal, Colts to the 6. Flacco out of the gun, two backs in the backfield, including Josh Downs to his left, Taylor to the right. Ball in the right hash. Flacco to Taylor, right up the gut. He's inside the 5, cuts to his right, into the end zone. Touchdown! I-N-D-Y. A 6-yard score for Jonathan Taylor on first and goal. No problem. Colts back on top, 13-10.
Fox. The voice of Matt Taylor, the play-by-play voice for the Indianapolis Colts, and he's here to help us with some new Vikings like Ryan Kelly and Will Fries and Isaiah Rodgers. And in return, we are here, if needed, to help Matt with some Cam Bynum and Daniel Jones intel. And the box joins us now. Matt, great seeing you at the Scouting Combine in your native Indiana. How are things?
Things are good. Spring is trying to creep its way here. I don't know what it's like in Minnesota, but today, we're in the 70s, and free agency is here, so it's busy, and the weather's good, so it's kind of a happy time. Did you guys do your patented AFC South roundtable, or is that dead because Tennessee Titans Vox Mike Keith left for the Tennessee Volunteers? Yeah, we gave it a shot. We did. We still did do it. Myself and Frank Frangie in Jacksonville and Mark Vandermeer in Houston. We're all lucky enough to be within proximity or a short flight up to Indianapolis to get together and do that every year at the Combine. And so we still did it. We honored Mike, but I'll tell you, it just wasn't the same without Mike. And in fact, it was Mike's original idea to do that. We started doing it a couple years ago. So we still did it, but it just wasn't the same. And, it's like when Michael Scott leaves the office, right? I mean, it's still, the show's still going, but it's just not the same. It kind of jumped the shark, but, it was still fun to do that, but we definitely miss Mike and wish him all the best. And, the Minnesota Vikings, for some reasons, will miss Cam Bynum. You're going to love him. Wonderful person. Zero off the field concerns. Covers a lot of ground for a safety, converted corner from Cal. Was he on your radar in Indianapolis? Given the Scouting Combine has turned into 90% free agency, 10% like rookies and stuff like that. Was he on your radar in Indianapolis? Well, he was certainly on the list of candidates to possibly targeting free agency for the Colts. And, this offseason for Indianapolis, they're switching schemes, new defensive coordinator now, and Lou Anarumo coming from the Cincinnati Bengals. And they had obviously kind of fallen on hard times, but I think the biggest reason for that is just personnel. They didn't have the Jimmies and Joes to execute, what they want to do and how they can be successful. And, when that defense was humming, they had guys in the back end that were performing what Lou Anarumo can do, and that's disguise and cloud the picture for opposing quarterbacks. And he did that. He pulled that off in the AFC Championship a couple times against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Did it a couple times earlier in the playoffs and years back against Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. So in order for this to work, I think the defense has to go. The focus of it has to go from back to front, if you will, which is kind of backwards. But, they have to have intelligent, savvy, veteran safeties, and they have to have somebody that's reliable and durable. And like you said, Cameron Bynum kind of fits all of that criteria. It was interesting for the Colts going into the offseason. They had a guy like that in Julian Blackmon, but kind of the only knock on him, the blemish there was just availability. He's been hurt a lot. He's a good player, and I think when healthy, he's still going to have a good career in the National Football League. But last year, tore his labrum, had to come back on a one-year deal last offseason, but got hurt right away at the beginning of the season, week 1, tears his labrum. He was playing strong safety, so they moved him to free safety to kind of mitigate the hits and that injury, and just didn't have nearly the same season last year as he did the year before. So Bynum comes in, and I think he's a plug-and-play starter and gives the Colts what they need out of that safety position to hopefully disguise, be game-specific, and help slow down the bad results that secondary has allowed to opposing quarterbacks and other teams' top playmakers weapon-wise on the outside.
I'd qualify Cam more as a strong safety than a free safety if we're going to go positionally. Now here, and you guys saw the Vikings last year and the rest of the NFC North, with Brian Flores as defensive coordinator, I mean, you got safeties playing linebacker, you got safeties playing nickel. Yeah. So Cam played all over the place, but he played basically every play. He played a ton during the season. He's quite good against the run, had some really tough moments late in the year with angles, but then again, Jahmyr Gibbs does that to a lot of players. Likewise for Kyron Williams. Are your Colts a good tackling bunch?
No, they were not last year. It's funny you bring that up. They were actually the poorest tackling team in the National Football League. Their defense had the most missed tackles in the league last year. So I think that's a big genesis of this move, going from Gus Bradley to Lou Anarumo. They got to shore that up. And, you can look at scheme and things like that. There's a million different things that add up to the Colts secondary last year, ranking 26th against the pass and third worst in completion percentage allowed to opposing quarterbacks at around 69%. Tons of stuff that are baked into that equation. But a lot of it was just fundamental. Like you said, poor angles and bad tackling, and they have to shore those things up here in the offseason starting in the OTA period.
Now, Daniel Jones is a mountain of a man. He's very quiet, and when watching him on the practice squad here, you can see all the talent he possesses. I mean, holy cow, he's really tough to bring down, super sturdy, throws a wonderful ball. Inside the 10, inside the 5, I would imagine he's a very tough customer with the run-pass option. But do you believe he'll compete for the starting? He's going to compete for the starting job there, right? I believe either the general manager or the coach said that at the Combine.
That is correct. They've been pretty steadfast on that idea really since the end of the season. Right. And like you said, 2 weeks ago at their State of the Union address in the offseason at the Combine, they want to push Anthony Richardson, and they need to based on, he's only played in 15 games in 2 years. He's had 4 different injuries. He got benched for 2 games, so he's played less than 1 full season so far in the NFL. And so you're talking about lack of availability and lack of production on the field. And then the whole benching thing just stemmed from, what he was putting out there in terms of preparation just didn't meet their standard of what they think they should be getting in terms of the work ethic and the leadership and all of the intangible stuff that, doesn't show up in the box score that leads to wins and losses on Sundays in the NFL. So you factor all of those things in. They need somebody that can push Anthony. But, again, with the availability or lack thereof, they need a viable backup option to come in and play because he just hasn't been able to show he can stay available over the course of 17 weeks. So they got to do right by that. But also, too, you just can't sit around and hope and wait that Anthony Richardson figures it out. This is a really, really important offseason for him. I don't know if it's make or break, but it feels really important considering the missed time on the field and, the low completion percentage and low passer rating and all the things we use to measure quarterbacks. I mean, he's really good right now in 2 different things. He's a really good running quarterback, obviously, with his skill set and freak athleticism, and he's a really good deep ball thrower. He does throw the deep ball well, and he's got a cannon for an arm. But everything else in the intermediate part of the passing game, all of that has to be cleaned up. 47% completion percentage last year, which was last in the NFL. So anybody that covers the league or covers the Colts, they exactly what I'm saying right now. But, they think Daniel Jones is going to be just as motivated as Anthony Richardson to prove that he can be a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL again. He's going to have a chip on his shoulder. So I do agree with you. It's going to be an open competition. May the best man win, and the Colts need the best man to win, regardless of how a guy was acquired or where they were drafted, because this roster is really, in a lot of key areas, it's put together well. It's filled with guys that are in the primes of their careers. You've got Pro Bowl players and Pro Bowl caliber players on both sides of the football. So you owe it to the rest of the roster to try to win and win now, because, last year, Paul, the Colts won 8 games, and had they had better, more consistent quarterback play, I think this was probably a 10 or 11 win team and probably wins the division. They're certainly in the playoffs. But this is a franchise right now that hasn't made the playoffs in 4 straight years. And, around here, people are getting a little itchy and a little frustrated, because they're used to, the Peyton Manning era and the Andrew Luck era and going to the playoffs every year. They haven't won an AFC South championship since 2014. Meanwhile, every other team in the division has won at least twice. So they kind of know what time it is, and they can't just sit and hope and wait. Anthony Richardson figures it out. They have to have a good insurance package to push him and possibly beat him out or play if he's banged up. They have to have somebody that can do all of those things, and I think Daniel Jones can be that guy, which is indicative of the contract they gave him. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it all shakes out here in the spring, starting in the spring, I should say.
To the Vikings. Fox. With Matt Taylor, play-by-play voice for the Indianapolis Colts. New Vikings offensive lineman / center, Ryan Kelly. What was his run in Indianapolis like?
Ryan Kelly will go down for me personally as one of my all-time favorite Indianapolis Colts players. He was the longest tenured player on the team, drafted in 2016, so he was the last first-round pick of former GM Ryan Grigson, who you guys know pretty well there in Minnesota now. Ryan is just consummate pro. He just oozes leadership. He was a 4-time Pro Bowl player, and he had to put up with a lot of stuff, right? I mean, he had 2 GMs, 3 head coaches, 12 different starting quarterbacks. I mean, think about that. 12 different starting quarterbacks in his 9 years with the Indianapolis Colts. And the first time you meet him, the first time you talk to him, after he kind of settles in, maybe just quiz him on the different quarterbacks he had to snap the football to, because he knows all of them in order. He can do it off the top of his head. I mean, he's a sharp guy. He's been through a lot, obviously, the stuff off the field with, the family tragedy and the loss of his daughter, a couple years back in 2021, that just galvanized the locker room. And, you obviously felt for him very, very deeply in that regard. But he's just a very down-to-earth guy. But he's just a no BS guy, too, in that he's just going to come in and bring his lunch pail, go to work, get the job done, make no excuses for anything. So I think you're still getting a guy that can play at a high level. The only blemish is that, when you reach free agency for the first time over the age of 30, obviously some questions come in. Last year he missed 7 games, and the Colts did draft somebody at his position, or somebody that can play his position last year in Tanner Bortolini, which is kind of what led to all of this. But I still think Ryan Kelly can play at a high level, 4-time Pro Bowler, and somebody that can still get it done and is, dying for personal and team success to happen at the same time.
Okay, Matt. So like with Ryan Kelly, last year he had the neck, a calf, and finally was shut down due to a lingering knee problem. So the last year and then before that, were constant injuries a concern with Ryan Kelly?
I wouldn't say they were a concern, but they would just sort of flare up. But I think, again, that's the nature of the business, right? I mean, you're talking about guys that are in the trenches every single play. Stuff's going to happen. You're going to get a little bit of a stinger, or you're going to get rolled up on, which is the case of what happened to Will Fries, right? Things are sometimes just out of your control when you're battling and you're in a bar fight, 60 times a Sunday, if you will. So I definitely would not label Ryan Kelly injury prone, but when you play 9 years in the NFL, you're going to get your stuff and you're going to accrue your things. Quite frankly, I think he probably battled through more stuff than we know about, which most offensive linemen can say as well. So I think it just speaks to his toughness, his willingness to fight and be there and answer the bell for his team. But there's no question that a handful of things the last couple of years have sidelined him. But I don't think that's the norm. I don't think that's who he is as a player. I just think it's just the nature of the position that he plays, battling for the leverage and things like that, play in and play out at the highest level in the NFL.
Appreciate that. What about guard Will Fries? What was his run with the Colts like?
Yeah, Will was a really, you talk about, one of my favorite guys the last couple of years. Will Fries is in that bucket as well. Loved his journey and loved his massive ascension. Went from a 7th-round pick, kind of a developmental guy. We'll take a flyer on him in 2021. Versatile piece out of Penn State. I think he played every offensive line position in college at Penn State except for center. So he plays guard and tackle. And then the Colts had a need for the right guard position in 2022, and he took that position and never gave it up. The only thing that sidelined him was that injury, week 5 against the Jaguars, got rolled up on, broke his tibia, had to get carted off the field. It was a really gruesome scene. Had to go to a local hospital in Jacksonville, stay overnight, get surgery, had that thing set before going back to Indianapolis. But that again is the only blemish on his radar, because he's turned himself into a fine player. Before that, had started 29 straight games. Last year, he was on pace for a career-low 4.1% pressure rate. Before that injury, Pro Football Focus had him as the number 2 guard in the NFL, the 9th best offensive lineman in the league before that injury. So he's a versatile guy. I don't know if he's going to be pegged to play guard or tackle in Minnesota, but I know he can do both. But we talked to him at the very end of the season on locker clearout day for the Colts following week 18. And he's a really down-to-earth, very insightful, just a good-natured guy. Did an interview with him, and he said, I'm on pace to be ready to go for OTAs in the spring. So I'd be shocked if he wasn't out there, at least in some capacity, for the Vikings when the weather gets nice up there. And, I think at the very least he should be ready to go for training camp, and he's a plug-and-play starter somewhere along that offensive line. You're getting a really good player.
Okay, well, then to land the plane on this, time for 2 more with Matt Taylor, the Colts Vikes. Why do you think the Colts were okay letting those guys go?
Well, with Ryan Kelly, he was, north of 30. And he was the highest paid center in the league in his last contract. It just boiled down to, you can only invest so much in that position and within that offensive line group. And again, the Colts did draft Tanner Bortolini last year, who had to play for Ryan Kelly in spot starts a season ago and did reasonably well. So you would think he's got a good chance to start for the Colts next year, going younger and cheaper there. Same thing with Matt Gonzalez, who they drafted out of Pittsburgh last year in the 3rd round. He had to play right tackle and left tackle last year, but he's got some position flexibility. He can play guard, too, did that in college at Pitt. So he's in the line to at least be a strong candidate to play right guard next year for the Colts. I just think it just came down to dollars and cents, and we've got some young, budding, talented guys on the roster at their positions that maybe we can develop and grow. I think that factored into it too. But also too, you look at the Colts, they've got needs. And so far they have spent some aggressive money in the early part of this free agency period, reportedly, on guys to come in and help out the secondary. That was a major weakness of this team a year ago. So they've addressed that. And they also think that some of the guys they drafted last year can come in and fill in, hopefully in a formidable way, despite losing 2 really good players in Ryan Kelly and Will Fries, who obviously are now with the Vikings.
Okay, and lastly, he's no longer a Colt. He went to the Eagles, but the speedy corner Isaiah Rodgers, 6th-round pick by Indy out of, I believe, UMass in 2020. Yep. I mean, he's a 4.2, 4.3 guy. And he was one of the early free agent acquisitions by the Vikings. What do you remember about Isaiah Rodgers? I know we had the gambling suspension in 2023. He had 3 interceptions in his 2nd year with the Colts. What do you remember?
I remember just a difference maker right away on special teams. He was a kick returner and a punt returner. He's got just electric speed. I think that's what attracted the Colts to him. And if I'm not mistaken, he's got some NFL bloodlines. He's got some, I think, cousins that have played in the NFL. I think Cromartie is his cousin, and they speak all the time, and they hold each other to a high standard there. So he's got that background. But he was in line to start, or at least be in the mix to start that year before he had that gambling suspension. And he's very remorseful about that. He knows that he goofed up big time. And from a personal angle, he was always a good guy to talk to in the locker room. So on an individual perspective, I'm glad that he's getting another chance to kind of redeem himself and get a second opportunity in the NFL, because he can play. Now he's going to have to fight his tail off to, get on the field. He's kind of a shorter guy, but he makes up with that with great speed. He's got good ball skills, and somebody, again, that I think can really make a difference for you on special teams.
My man, that was elite intel. Greatly appreciate it, and have fun this season with your Indianapolis Colts, and we'll catch up down the road, okay?
I appreciate you. Have a great rest of the show, and can't wait to catch up with you soon.
Yep, thank you, bud. Matt Taylor, play-by-play voice for the Indianapolis Colts on our new Vikings and former Colts, Ryan Kelly, Will Fries, and Isaiah Rodgers. That ended up being a marathon segment courtesy of Steve's Appliances and stevesappliances.com. stevesappliances.com. If you need any form of appliance, give the website a look. stevesappliances.com. Back after this. Hey. Oh, thank you, Matt Taylor. That was elite intel there on some of the new Vikings. Ryan Kelly, Will Fries, a couple of offensive linemen. They have the beef-eating variety. And Isaiah Rodgers, the speedy corner who won a Super Bowl with Philadelphia last year. So what's next plan for the Minnesota Vikings, given things have slowed down a little bit? Why wouldn't they, after you drop that kind of money in free agency? There still are myriad of familiar names available via free agency. A veteran backup quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings seems to be quite the chic talker. Mentioned it earlier with Mike Florio from ProFootballTalk.com. I'm Cam Flacco, if anybody cares.
Ooh. And
would have been great to have him here a couple of years ago. It's, Nordo and I discussed it a little bit. I think it was at the end of the Dobbs experiment and either before or after Jaron Hall. Very late in the season.
Yeah.
And the reason I brought it up was because that year, the Vikings went through 4 quarterbacks. I think Cleveland went through 5 that year.
It was 4. Well, I know they won games with at least 4.
Yeah, they 4 or 5. But they were in a similar situation, and I didn't think of it. I'm not doing the hindsight is 2020 thing here, or like trying to be Mr. Right from 2 years ago. But I watched Flacco with Cleveland, and I'm like, okay, well, the ball's on time. The deep ball's still good. And granted, the moving part of the equation is, that's probably not going to happen too frequently for somebody who's like 40 years of age. But the Vikings offensive line then compared to what it's supposed to be now, those are different situations.
Yeah.
And Joe Flacco knows where the bones are buried, man. He absolutely does not seem to be the type that's going to be nipping at somebody's heels in covert and divisive fashion, trying to get his way into the starting lineup. And it would have been great to have him here a couple of years ago. If they had moved for Flacco instead of Dobbs, I'm convinced, and I have no idea if they were interested or not. I'm convinced that they would have made the postseason.
Well, we talked about that at the time, right? Like, what was the Dobbs connection? Where did that come from? Who else was available? Flacco was one of those guys. And you're right, Flacco goes to and everything kind of fell apart in the playoffs for him against the Texans, I think. But they did.
I think the Dobbs connection was Grigson related. Senior vice president of player personnel for the Vikings. His younger brother was and/or is part of the Arizona Cardinals covenant.
Oh, sweet.
Well,
okay.
And that's how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything's relationship,
especially when you're in a pinch.
Now let me ask you this though, and I saw someone text it in, and it's something that I've thought of too, because we have been talking about backup quarterbacks, even kind of joking yesterday. Best of luck to Dobbs moving forward. Got a new deal, I think, with the Patriots, 2-8. So do your thing, Pastronaut. But if the Vikings do make the playoffs with Joe Flacco, how does that impact the team's ability to get up to 10 and get J.J. McCarthy? Like, what are the ripple effects of how things take place, and then ultimately using the currency that they had to move up and get Dallas Turner?
Right.
Jury's still out on the future, but a bright future hopefully for him.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, we went through some weird times, and we had to watch a half of Jaron Hall, and we watched Nick Mullins keep us in the game and then throw the game away to the other team, specifically the Kitties. But that also put us in a spot where it didn't hurt us as badly to find maybe the future of the Vikings and McCarthy.
The reason I broached it then and do so now is because they made a move for a quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So if you're going to make a move for one, not being able to know what the future looks like.
You're doing it to win games.
Right.
Yeah.
And they won 7 with the ragtag situation they had. Ain't no ragtag to Joe Flacco. I mean, he's a responsible, he's an efficient, he just very, very smart quarterback. So I like Brett Rippon, and I'm not saying Brett Rippon, who started like 6 games in his career, should be the standalone backup, but he's in the covenant. So whether it's a 2 or a 3, he's in the covenant. Now, Joe Flacco would be my choice, just looking at these names out there. And with J.J. McCarthy, I mean, the question would be, how excited are fans for the J.J. McCarthy era to unfurl? And I would imagine it's about a 9 out of 10, or maybe an 8.5 out of 10. And the only 1 or the 1.5 would be because they haven't seen it. So therefore there would be trepidation. But his press conferences are going to be terrific. He's open, he's honest, and I'm guessing after games he's going to be emotional after wins and losses. Let's not forget, JJ to a certain extent runs like the wind and will control huddles like the good ones. They've set him up pretty well with the skill players for sure, and now it seems the Minnesota Moving Company, the offensive line also. Plus we have the draft. So, I mean, Flacco's cool being a backup, that's clear. He just wants to, the Delaware kid just wants to stretch it as far as he can because he's still having a good time. And he has that coach in the room piece to him. So that's like my veteran backup take. I have no idea if they're interested or not. But with the Vikings, there will be more free agency. There could be, I guess, soon with Javon Hargrave being released by the 49ers officially today. All the right people reporting. The defensive lineman, the defensive tackle, will be part of the Minnesota Vikings covenant, which is really cool. He's a very, very tough guy and very tough to stop, specifically when he's healthy. He is in the second half of his career. But the league year officially begins today. Yeah. And much of the stock shelf has been emptied around the league. I mean, you like top shelf type stuff. I don't know if there are any top shelfers still there just waiting for the right deal. And I don't consider Aaron Rodgers to be top shelf anymore. But you still can get things that will help you. And I fully expect the Vikings to do that depending on what they do in the draft. So the Chains compensatory pick is like 96, right?
97. Yeah.
97. So now you're going to go 24, 97 and a couple of fifths. And that's what they have for now. So with free agency mostly in the rearview mirror for the Minnesota Vikings, outside of some Stephon Gilmores or Shaq Griffins or players like that they find on 1-year deals to plug and play or plug and help, the draft is pretty much next week where the focus is going to go. The free agency, I've said this before, free agency provides the steroids to amplify and energize what you already have. The draft and hitting on those kids, that's what the big boys do, and it's time to join that covenant, even with 4 picks. So what are the tells? With Kelly and Fries in the mix, O-lineman at 24, I don't deem to be a no shot, but I deem it to be more of a long shot now than it was when I was at Indianapolis. What about D linemen? Jonathan Allen and eventually Hargrave, I believe, have ebbed that tide, but that % chance of drafting a defensive lineman around the 24th overall pick, I absolutely believe that's still in play. Could be in play, but I think the I think the chances have decreased, but not exponentially.
Yeah.
Murphy Jr. and Rodgers at corner with Mekhi Blackmon on the comeback trail. You still got work to there. You still got work to do there. There's still work to do there, but with Murphy Jr. and the cash he got and the fact that he returns to a scheme that he knows, and Rodgers, it's clear they identified Isaiah Rodgers, whether it's Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, Ryan Grigson, Brian Flores, Durante Jones, the defensive backs coach. Somebody identified Rodgers as untapped talent, and they got him for a good deal. So they like him. He's going to start. I mean, I'd be surprised if he doesn't start. I mean, you don't grab somebody that early in free agency, pay them the way you do, which wasn't exponential, but nevertheless, he's favored to start as of now. How does that play into 24 when it comes to the cornerback market? What about running back? I mean, you re-up with Aaron Jones, with Ty Chandler and or Cam Akers. Those are wild cards in the equation. Running back still very much could be in play for the Minnesota Vikings at 24. Linebacker is a no. Wide receiver most likely is a no. Tight ends, good class for tight ends. And I'm not, this is lower on the percentageometer. Johnny Munt leaves. Josh Oliver still here. TJ Hawkinson still is here. How much longer will Hawkinson be here? And I don't have his contract in front of me. It's a lot. And now it's time to mesh productivity or lack thereof with contract. Missed half a season last year, kind of got to draw a line through that thing. Didn't have a touchdown the entire regular season. Got one in the playoff game in garbage time. Young quarterbacks throughout the years have been extremely reliant on tight ends because they generally run in the middle of the field, and that's the easiest thing to see. So McCarthy with the right hash, left sideline, left hash, right sideline, arm strength, it's there, but it'll take some perfecting. And tight ends generally don't run many routes out there. Of course, you got Jefferson. Of course, you have Addison, and maybe some other moves to take place during free agency, but or with trades or whatever. But I don't like them to draft a wide receiver at 24. I think a tight end is sneakier at that spot than maybe some others think.
What about safety?
Great question.
Because I still look
Great
at
question.
it. Again, Cam Bynum out the door. Love Metellus. I'm going to lean on Hitman returning.
And if you take a safety in the first round, he better be good.
Well, that and I saw early on, again, it's mock draft madness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to pretend I've watched all of Malachi Starks' tape. But you see a couple of college names in the mix, Starks being one of them. I do think that's a sneaky spot of need. In terms of just how things are laying out, you can love Theo Jackson.
Agreed.
And you can pay him. That's cool. Now it's time to work, Theo. So in terms of depth, I look at, actually, whether it's a guard, it's a fat guy in the middle defensively, and safety, or running back, as you mentioned. I think this is one of those drafts, PA, where we're going to go into even maybe the week of draft still feeling like there are 3 or 4 different directions the team could go, and not necessarily be mad about it at 24.
And because Jones got a 2-year deal, there are outs, and it's not expensive. So and now getting to, for all of us really, because Aaron, was so out there with the media and with the public, and people really got to feel just how engaging he is. That's not a bad guy to have as your alpha in a room with a highly gifted running back. So, yes, I think running back absolutely is in play at 24 or somewhere around there. With the 24th overall pick in the draft, the A topic for many is trade back and amass more picks. And I understand that when it comes to averages and percentages and what's pragmatic over the years. I'm just not necessarily sure that I'm into that here.
Okay.
Unless I know where the picks, and it's like if you move back to 26, 7, 8, 9, because you want to get whomever you want to get.
Yep.
Well, to do that, I need something on Friday. So I don't want to mess around with this Saturday stuff and this current regime. I said it a year and change ago, and I stick by it. The general manager has a stock trading background and is proving to be very good at handling free agency. So that is the current strength that is identifiable to everybody. The drafting part of it has to become better from the beginning to the end. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to completely correct itself this year when you only have 4. So you got to hit, McCarthy has to be good.
Yeah.
Turner has to be good. 24 has to be good.
97 has to be good.
And 97 has to play.
Yes.
There you go. So let's start there before we're like, well, you only have 4 picks, man. You got to end up with 6 or 7. I'm not necessarily in that camp.
I think it'll get to a point at some point, as it always does every year, is, well, if this falls this way, remember, no offensive players went to like pick 15, or defensive players went to like pick 15. So you can play out the scenarios. Man, if Kwesi could bring 24 back into the 30s and get a pick in the 40s, now you got 2 seconds. I mean, there's going to be a lot of time for that conversation.
Right. I'm cool with that.
For me, every step of the way, whatever happens, it has to be a home run.
Yep.
So if we chill at 24, totally down for it.
Yep.
24 has to make plays and memories in 2025.
Agreed.
And that's where I'm at on it.
And it's, we'll say it, you're going to hear a lot of things regurgitated, A, because the audiences are ever changing, but B, because this is where the football loving heart falls. It's when everybody's right about things in the draft and from the combine, and that means the insiders with the media that starts reporting it, then the insiders, the coaches, the personnel people on or off the microphones confirming it with people like me, and then the fan base completely buys into it. You got to take part in it. You're not a lemming. This is not Pavlovian drafting. It's the right way to draft. And the defensive tackles and the running backs might be unprecedented this year with the depth. So whatever amount of picks you have Thursday and Friday, if they went to running back za, or defensive tackle za, I'm in on that. Now you just got to be right. We'll be right back.
A couple minutes of a deviation from the NFL. News du Nord, which will actually include some NFL momentarily, but News du Nord is brought to you by The Casino at Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com. Feeling the felt, poker, blackjack, and table games, live racing kicking off in the spring, special events all year round. Best place in Shakopee. Go to CanterburyPark.com for more details. Minnesota Timberwolves with a high 5 of wins, 5 in a row for Finch, though. They are at the Denver Nuggets this evening. They are 4-point dogs against Joker, against Jamal Murray, and maybe Aaron Gordon. I saw he might be questionable into tonight's game.
Yep. So Michael Porter's on a heater, put a body on him.
Really? Okay. So Wolves at the Nuggets tonight. You and I have both identified this one as important, as then they'll head back home with a chance to rack up some W's over the next 2 weeks.
Yes, sir.
What excites you, and maybe it is about how they handle Michael Porter Jr., DiVincenzo's work, Conley's had a couple of nice games in a row as part of this winning streak, but really the story of it, how you have Julius Randle in the mix now, healthy, Rudy back from Sunday after a back that he's been nursing. What do you like about the game in Mile High tonight?
I like Point Randle a lot, and I want to see it against a super squared away coaching staff. It's kind of like what we talked about against Miami with Spoelstra. The Wolves looked really good for large patches against LaMelo Ball and that weak Charlotte team. But like Nordo and I said, 2 days later, Spoing going to let you run to the basket and dunk. Okay, somebody's going to crush you, and you're going to have to think about it. Eric Spoelstra is one of the best coaches in the history of the NBA, and the game bared that fruit. It was relatively close, but the Wolves were the better team. So then they come home and they beat a Spurs team that really had no desire to be in the cornfields, put up a season-high 141. Now you've had a chance to chill, and the Nuggets are hot. They beat OKC there on Sunday after losing to them on Saturday, Friday or Saturday. They had a back-to-back at OKC. Now, those games against Oklahoma City are hard. So they're coming off those games with a day's rest. The Wolves have an extra day's rest. I do think that factors into it a little bit. Joker guy is playing about as well as he's ever played. Finch's staff, specifically with Mike and Nori, have developed plans for Jokic that have been just fantastic over the years. One game, they're taking away his passing lanes. The other game, they're having Karl Anthony Towns beat him up by the 3-point line. Then the next game, they're going to leave him open from 3 and go, here, kitty, kitty.
Yeah.
Because Joker ain't great at threes. And Joker turns the ball over about 5, 6, 7 times a game. So they put him in positions that are compromising to him. I mean, you just have to change it up with him. He's just so good. He's an MVP candidate the minute the schedule comes out. Jamal Murray is healthy. He's playing quite well. And the Timberwolves have beaten the Nuggets 9 of the last 13 times in the regular season, 13 of the last 20, including playoffs. And I believe they'll beat them again tonight.
Man, you know, the Golden State Warriors, we've been talking about how they just don't lose these days after acquiring Jimmy. But whether they go to Charlotte, they get that W, they go play the Knicks without Karl. Then they're with Brooklyn, who's just everyone's hurt, and it's a complete disaster. They need 20 points a game out of Zaire Williams. Good luck. They do beat Detroit, but then they get Portland. Next up for them tomorrow night, they're in the 6th spot. We're in the 7th spot. That's why I'm going through this.
Yeah.
They're hosting the Kings without Sabonis.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just everything's falling in line for the Warriors right now.
Malik Monk missed a game 2 games ago, just came back, might have re-injured himself.
DeRozan's, I mean, he's picking up. I mean, the stat lines are unbelievable from DeRozan, but it's not translating to wins.
Same with Zach LaVine. I mean, Zach's finally found his feet with the Kings. Their bench is problematic. Jake LaRavia, a former Grizzly, started to catch fire, but then he got hurt. They have some injury problems. But Golden State's going to beat the Kings. But you mentioned, the Wolves, they're going to be home for a week and change.
Yeah, Utah, Orlando, a couple against New Orleans.
Yep.
There's some winnable ones in there.
You got Indiana in there.
Yeah.
Tyrese Halliburton returned last night, hit a walk-off 3.
You saw the 4-point play to win it? How cool was that?
Unbelievable shot. So Indiana it's the best of the bunch, in my opinion, for what they're going to see at home. Orlando with Franz Wagner and with Banchero can be sneaky, but they're down Jalen Suggs, so their point guard situation is problematic. New Orleans is tricky because Zion Williamson had a double-double in his last game, and but he's in and out. They do the load management bit with him.
He does play well against the Wolves.
Kills them.
He finds his way.
Kills them. But you got to get both of those if you want to get out of that play-in. Now, the Lakers, it's from a standing standpoint, when you lose to the Brooklyn Nets, well, then it's not hoist the white flag, but you are definitely on the radar. They're 40-23. They're going to be without LeBron, I would guess, the rest of the regular season.
You think so?
And
okay.
they'll get him ready for the playoffs. The Wolves are 4.5 behind them, 4.5 behind the Grizz. They're without Jaren Jackson for 2 more weeks. The Rockets are starting to win. Fred VanVleet messed that whole thing up. The Rockets were the bomb. VanVleet came back, shot his patented 22%. They kept losing, and then VanVleet got hurt. Now they're winning again. So the Western Conference is thick, and it's rich, and it's compelling. Every team, the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, props to the Dallas Mavericks, man. After everything they've been through, they're 33-33. I mean, they've won 3 of their last 10.
And they have a 2.5 game cushion in the playoffs.
Yeah, they're going to be in it because they'll get Anthony Davis back. And I bet you they get P.J. Washington, Davis, and Derek Lively or one of those bigs at about the same time.
PJ's imminent. Yeah. P.J. Washington, like next 2 games probably, then AD, maybe Lively. Yeah, they're going to be a factor.
And somebody's going to hook the Mavs and be like, they suck. Kyrie's out for the year. Everybody hates the GM. And you got all these bigs, but now you only have 2 or 3 of them. And they're going to give somebody some headaches.
There was a funny bit. You were mentioning the Lakers without LeBron. They were playing and lost to the Brooklyn Nets. Mm-hmm. Nick Claxton, who, it hurts me, he's on Khan's team, LFL. He shoves, there's no reason for it, blatantly shoves Luka from behind.
Wow.
And Luka was not going for this particular rebound. Mm-hmm. It was just blatantly just Nick Claxton being a jerk. Just shoves Luka. Nobody did anything about it.
Wow.
So then PJ, who's chilling at home, he's got a fresh baby, he's got this ankle thing that I think is probably taking a little too long. They're like, PJ would have murdered that guy.
Yeah, would have killed him.
PJ, if he would have been off the bench, he could have been in the locker room watching on TV. He would have sprinted on the ankle out of the locker room to fight Nick Claxton to protect his star. And the Lakers are like, I don't know. All right, I guess you shoved him and moved on. It was just a funny moment from a couple days ago.
The Nuggets are 22-9 at home, and they've won 6 of their last 10. But I really like how the Wolves match up against the Nuggets. They've beaten them twice this year, both at Target Center. Now the next 2 are in the Mile Get High City, and it's crunch time. It's nervous time in the old association.
Indeed. That's all I got for News to Nord, because we will jump back to NFL really for the final hour of the show with Alec Lewis.
And the Wild got the money in a shootout against the Avs last night. Big win for the Minnesota Wild. Still down Eki and Kirill and Brodsey. And we bring that up because 9 to noon is at Wild Skate tomorrow for Vox in the Box. Kevin Gorg will join us for the first hour. We start with Wild coach John Heinze at 9, Russo Radio at 10, and analyst and former captain Wes Walls at 11 o'clock, plus much more. Norder produces, and I'm Paul Allen. When we return, Alec Lewis from The Athletic joins 9 to noon to recap Minnesota Vikings free agency, maybe prognosticate as to what's next, and amplify the program at KFAN.